I am Amber Berry, Director of Strategic Initiatives at Middle States Association. MSA has named this year as the Year of Changemakers in Education. As a continuation in this series, today our topic is Women Leading Schools and Systems in a Time of Massive Change. In honor of Women's History Month, the conversation with our panelists, Dr. Renee Rattray and Dr. Peggy Pelonis, will provide the global perspectives of women leaders, the impact of women at the helm of bringing communities through change, and the outlook of women leaders on the next frontiers of education. Let's meet our panelists. A seasoned educator and advocate, Dr. Renee Rattray champions educational transformation as CEO of Teach Good, Lead Good, and a consultant at the XQ Institute. Her journey from special education teacher and principal to impactful leadership roles showcases her dedication to fostering inclusive and innovative learning environments. Renee's strategic initiatives, notably in the Caribbean, have been instrumental in reshaping educational practices. Her broad background and scholarship positions her to share with authority on a wide range of topics within the educational sector from both a local and international perspective. Her global engagements and board memberships reflect her expansive influence, aiming to strive for excellence in education and community development. Welcome, Renee.
Thank you so much, Amber. It's such a pleasure to be with you this morning. I'm excited about our conversation.
Looking forward to it. Dr. Peggy Pelonis stands out in the fields of educational leadership change management. She is the president of ACS Athens and offers workshops worldwide that blend her insights as a psychotherapist with her educational expertise. Her work emphasizes comprehensive wellness and skill development, targeting transformative outcomes. Her philosophy intertwines mental and physical well-being with skill acquisition, aimed at transformative global impact. Having served in leadership roles at esteemed institutions, including both K-12 schools and universities, she is positioned to offer valuable insights into effective educational practices and the nurturing of adaptive, forward-thinking educational communities in her work serving on many boards. Here at MSA, we are grateful for her voice on our Rail Advisory Board and as a commissioner since 2021. Welcome, Peggy.
Hello, Amber. It's good to see you. And hello, Renee.
Hi, I'm sorry, Peggy. Great to see you.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Fantastic. So let's launch right into this conversation. And we're going to start by talking about change leadership. You both share unique global perspectives, having worked and led in many different countries, and you have successfully transformed educational spaces for improved student outcomes. Would you please share an insight or a memorable experience from leading a significant change project? Why don't we start with you, Renee?
Yeah, I have been honored to be a part of many significant projects that have been really at the cusp of change. Particularly in Jamaica, the one that comes to mind is a project that the Ministry of Education in Jamaica asked that the organization I was working with partner with them on. And what we were doing is to support some of the schools that the Ministry of Education had deemed as being in need of immediate support. Some of them were about to be closed due to poor student performance and really low expectations of everybody, in the school and in the communities in which they existed. And I think that there was just this general disconnect between school and home, and teachers were not as engaged anymore. And the truth is that it was in many of those schools where they were underserved, just not getting the resources that they needed, as you know, is the case globally, right? And so it was an exciting challenge because it became the talk in schools. Apparently, the Prime Minister at the time had called the schools failing schools, which created a lot of angst in the public space because and that students were being labeled and teachers were being labeled. So it was an exciting opportunity for us to go in and to work with those schools. And one of the things that really, I think, was the biggest lesson as I went in was that you have to enter spaces like that knowing that the solutions are in those spaces. in schools, with the people in those schools have all the ideas about what they need, and it would and presuming what the needs were would be the wrong approach. And so I think that throughout my leadership, I have always been able to enter with 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 a clean slate, ready to learn from the people as much as I'm able to share my expertise with them. And what ended up happening in that project is that we worked with schools. Each school was unique. Each school had its own unique challenges and things that were special about it, and people who had skills that could bring so much to bear on the transformation that needed to happen. And in little by little, the community became more engaged. The school itself started to feel different because persons saw themselves in it. There was buy-in, there was ownership. We were talking to everyone involved, from the security guard to the parents who were dropping their students off at school, to the ancillary workers, all the students. And so we had really rich engagement about what the dreams were. I think at a point in schools like those, people stop dreaming and believing in what's possible when expectations are so low. And that's the joy for me as a leader, and working in environments where change is taking place. It's seeing everyone come into the realization that we are valued, there's possibility, there's potential, there's, all of a sudden creativity and innovation starts to raise its head when that kind of space is created in environments of change like that. So yeah, and it really comes down to it being like an all of community approach, with everybody being a part,
Yeah. Thank you for that example. I have to say it resonates with accreditation, the principle that you go in validating the people who are there, their unique identity, and that they have the wherewithal, the talent, and the resources to change. They just need a guide through that journey. And that was your role coming in, not as the expert to overhaul things, right? So I love that your approach really reflects our foundational principles at MSA. Thank you for sharing that example.
Sure.
Peggy, would you share with us a significant change project that you have led?
Yeah, Amber, thank you. There have been numerous projects, but I have to say that the most memorable happened in 2019, something I'll never forget in my entire life. We had two losses of very, people in higher administration here at ACS Athens. They were sudden, both of them. And the one of them was my predecessor, the person who was in charge of the school at the time. And so I was asked to take over and transition the community and transition the students. And then, of course, what happens? The pandemic hits. So we were lucky because we had been training our teachers to do hybrid instruction for middle school and high school. And who would have thought that elementary would need to be trained too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we gave basically teachers 1 day to transition over to online teaching and learning, which we were the first school to do it in the region. And many people even came from the US that were, expats. They came back to Greece to this school because they wanted their kids to continue that education. The education continued. So what did I learn? How did that shape my approach to leadership? First of all, I think it's important to be, as much as possible, prepared for the unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
You can never be prepared, but you have to be prepared to pivot, to change, to move, in whatever direction. And at the time, if you remember, with the pandemic, there was a lot of fear. So a lot of fear in the community. What's going to happen? People weren't seeing a way out. What's going to happen with the schooling of our kids, and so on and so forth. So I knew that I had to create a vision that was greater than the fear. And I thought, okay, what is it that we have here? Where is this vision? What's it going to be? So I said, we are a student-centered school, and we need to focus on educating the students and making sure that the students are not going to miss that part. And so that creating a vision in that direction and getting everybody to contribute to that vision. First, in the beginning, it was working with a small team of administrators, then moving into division chairs and bringing everybody slowly on board and really helping them focus, giving them the vision, but also the steps. What are the steps that we co-create? And once we had the steps, what that created was a sense of hope, a sense of community, a sense that we're in this together. Even if we don't know what's going to happen, we know that we're going to figure this out together because there's a strength in that togetherness. And of course, my background as a psychologist also helped because I was able to also, send information to the community of what they might expect and what they could do to manage this situation. And that created a sense of hope. And many parents said to me, we wait for that Friday, the letter, because it just gives us so much hope. And so that created a confidence in the community, internally in the school, but also outside, that even if we don't know where we're going, we're going to figure it out. There's a lot of smart people in the school. If we're all moving in the same direction, and if we build up these strengths, I think we're gonna make it happen. And if we make mistakes, that's fine too. We're gonna move in that direction. So I think that's what I learned, that you have to be ready to pivot and to change and to just kind of change your strategy at any given moment if you see that it's not working, or if the community needs something different to lead them.
Thank you, Peggy. I appreciate that foundational principle of community that is so integral and unique to school. And when you talked about loss in community needing to be that stable force, as a school leader who's experienced that, I wish I had a background and foundation in counseling, because that pastoral care that a community needs, in addition to the practicality of needing to continue community online through 2020, must have been remarkable. It is so fortunate that your teachers were equipped to really support the students and connect and be comfortable as you could be, being put into that position quite suddenly. So that's really interesting. Thank you. So I'm curious, you both spoke to how you believe that the work is co-creation, as you said it, Peggy. It's working with the school leaders and the people in the community. And Renee, you talked about it as validating the talent that's there and just untapping and identifying how school leaders can make change. I'm curious how your roles as school leaders position you to really foster collaboration among the teachers, the staff, and the educators and stakeholders that you work with during change.
You want me to go?
Go ahead, sure.
Yeah, I think that in my approach to leadership, and I was a school principal myself, I think I led centering relationships, and building trust was something that is something that I value, and I think that as leaders we must work towards, right off the bat. I think that people go with you if they believe in you and if they know that you believe in them. I think that, our intention has to always be to create an environment where everyone feels heard, feels valued, feels that they have a place at the table, that they can contribute to what is happening, to that positive energy, that positive change that's happening. And also I feel that a big part of doing that has to do with our ability to communicate. I very often I recognize that persons receive information in different ways. And as a leader, you must be mindful of the various ways in which people take in and hear information, and even what's unsaid, very often people also take in. So it's really important that we communicate. Peggy spoke to that about how you made people aware of what was going on at every step of the game, so that there would be, knowledge and awareness and calm, which is what leaders have to bring, and therefore hope. I think it's very often when we're going through a process of change, if it's not happening fast enough, or if things are challenging, we tend to lose hope very quickly and not remember that where we're going, that we're going together, and what our goal is, what the end goal is. And as leaders, we have to keep reminding to be the keeper of hope, and also the person who is able to communicate that all the time, even when we don't feel hope ourselves. It's really important for us to tap into the energies of the people around us to keep focused as well. Boy, we leaders are superhuman people. We really are, because it demands a lot of us. And I think that we have to find ways, whether it's within the space that we're changing or outside with the people who we have connections with, to find a tribe that will keep us focused on hope. I think that again, valuing the expertise of the people who are there in a real way and not a superficial way, meaning that you do actually implement some of the things that people suggest, take them into account, is really important, because I think very often we ask for people's opinions or voices and then we don't actually use them, especially with our students. I'm finding that more and more. I keep saying now I'm not entering any spaces with people and having conversations unless young people are there and students are there, because we plan for them but not with them. And I'm very intentional about that. In my space where I come from in Jamaica, in the Caribbean, we tend to have a very top-down approach, and we don't invite our children or people who we don't believe are on the same level. It's very hierarchical. And so my mission has always been to disrupt that and to make sure that everybody is at the table. Everybody has a presence there. When I go into schools and do strategic planning or work with teams, when they bring their admins, their academic staff alone, I'm like, hold up, some people are missing from this space, people who make this school run, this space run. In the cafeteria, if the cafeteria is late with lunches every day, that's a problem. Everybody has his or her part to play, and it's connecting those dots when leading that's important, to foster collaboration of all who are involved.
Thank you. Peggy, what is your approach to fostering that collaboration?
We're in the face of change. Is that as I think about that, Amber, I thought about, that first of all, that we all know that change is very difficult, and there's a natural resistance to change. And, that's because we are creatures of habit, and we do want our predictability and our familiarity, and that just feels safer sometimes, even though we may know that that may not be the best way to do things, but that familiarity, helps us feel safe. So the resistance to change is kind of a natural thing. So there's got to be a way around that. And so, but first recognizing that is very important. So recognizing it, first of all, in myself, in the people around me, and then in the greater community, saying, okay, this is normal to feel like you don't want to change things, or to be afraid of change, or to resist change, or whatever it is. But at the same time, I felt like I had to create a sense of urgency. Cannot get stuck in this fear. We've got to get over it. And so how do we do that? Well, you create that urgency, and then by creating the vision, you help people see that there is a way, that there is a roadmap. There's a step-by-step roadmap that's going to take people to a better place. That doesn't mean we're not going to make mistakes, and so on and so forth. So it's important then to assign roles. Because when people feel that, okay, I've got a role to play in this, I'm a piece of the puzzle that's really important. And if I add my piece, my strength to this, my voice, my, ideas, that's going to make the puzzle, work better. The bigger picture is going to come together faster and easier. And so that's what happens. That's how you get people to collaborate. That's how I get people to collaborate, I should say. Always start with those that don't need a lot of persuading, They get it right away, and they think, okay, I got this team, this small team. And then they go out and then they work with the people that they know, and you give them the roadmap and you say, okay, here's how you can do this. Who can you tap into? And then slowly that grows. And before you know it, you have a small or a bigger community. Of course, it's very important to provide frequent feedback. What's working? Where do we need to pivot and fine tune? And also to recognize people as they're in their roles. That's very important, to encourage them, because in the face of fear and in the face of change, oftentimes people lose their courage. So what do we want to do? We want to encourage them. We want to help them find that courage. And many times that means when you need to find the courage to take risks and to get to the next step.
Yeah.
So that's what worked a lot for me, and works for me when I'm working on getting people to collaborate.
Thank you. It's a perfect segue that you're talking about how there is fear in change. We're having this conversation really glorifying the idea of change because we know, as folks who live in that space of pushing communities through it, that the outcomes are so worth it. And the risks and mistakes and failures along the way are learning opportunities, and we grow stronger.
Yeah. And Amber, I just wanted to add that it's really important that everyone is learning and that there's this culture of continuous learning. So failure will not seem as such a big deal and a huge setback, because if we're in that space, then it means that we get up again, we figure it out, we find another solution, fail the first attempt in learning, as they say. So it's really important that we, as leaders, we create this space where people feel as if they're always growing and always learning, and that's an intentional practice.
It is intentional, right? Yeah.
And it's celebrating that learning spirit, right? It's not that we've all arrived, it's that we're willing to get back up again and keep trying and grow together.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk a little bit, I think this relates really well to talking about equity in education. Renee, you describe your life's work as helping to transform schools, communities, and school systems by developing leaders to use their creativity and to lead with compassion and a sustainable ecosystem that supports all children. And you have emphasized how important it is to have student voice as we move toward equitable spaces. And Peggy, at ACS Athens, you lead your school in the framework of the United Nations' fourth Sustainable Development Goal: ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So my first question for you on this topic is, would you share with us evidence of progress toward equity in education that you have led? And why don't we start with you, Peggy?
I think it's funny that you say that, because we just recently had a recognition at UNESCO on inclusion, and they recognized 3 of our programs that we had been working on for a number of years. One of them is called the Youth to Youth, and that has to do with young unattended refugee minors. We have a program here to help them receive an education and also integrate in the community. Now, these are kids with a lot of trauma, a lot of loss, but coming into a country where, so we've created these programs on a Saturday, and our own students and our teachers come in as volunteers and work with these children. But as a result of that project, we received, attention internationally, and a very wonderful benefactor offered scholarships for some of these kids to attend our school. So that's one of our way that we're, inclusive. Another program has to do with a program that we've developed in the region that's one of its kind, that has to do with working with kids with learning differences. Mm-hmm. It's not a widespread concept in this country, so people don't have the skills to be able to work with kids with learning differences, but we do have that program. And so we include, we want to provide a platform for everybody to learn, regardless of how they learn, and give them the tools to be able to do that. So that was the second program that was recognized. And then another program that was developed by a student when she was just 15 years old, and she decided that she wanted to do work with the homeless in the streets of Athens at night. And the interesting thing about that was, besides providing, food and clothes and so on and so forth, the students really took time to get to know that community in the streets and understand how they got where they got. And as a result of that, they were told by the people in the street how, they felt seen and heard for the first time. And then the students developed proposals for the ministry to take a look and see how they can help integrate and provide jobs. Some of the people on the streets were mentally ill, all these things. So I think these 3 programs were ways that we are contributing. And our motto here is developing conscious global citizens, which means, how do you become a problem solver and position yourself to be a problem solver by first being aware of the local and global issues? And that's why we use the Sustainable Development Goals. Once you position yourself to be a problem solver, how do you turn the knowledge and skill into action? Do something locally that can have global impact. So by doing something locally, you're also contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals. So you get little kids in elementary school that create these plans for the SDGs, and they keep saying, "Oh, Miss, are we going to make it by 2030? Is the planet going to get there? Are we, we're doing our part." And it's really great to see this happening.
Oh, thank you for the diversity of those examples, and each one so complex. There could be a very superficial way that your school or your students tried to make a difference, maybe, or help a little bit. But I really appreciate the thoughtfulness that it's long term. It's about developing empathy. That is the road to equity. Thank you.
Yeah.
Renee, would you like to share an example as well?
Yeah. So I'm working on a really exciting project in Barbados at the moment. It's taking a lot of my time, but it's great time, and it's a lot of good trouble that I'm getting up to. I think that right now, when you talk about equity, I don't think that anybody involved in leadership in any space can. I think it requires boldness. I don't believe that there's room for passivity and neutrality at the moment with the state of our world. And, in Barbados, like Jamaica and other Caribbean islands in which I work, we've had a strong, as you know, colonial past. It's deeply rooted. We're wedded to many practices, and one of the things that runs through is this whole business of inequity. So in schools, all schools are definitely not equal. They're not the same. There's very few, too few schools and groups of students who are able to, matriculate into higher learning in those spaces, or to become whatever it is that they need to be fully, full citizens and to contribute meaningfully. And the statistics around that are pretty staggering and disturbing, and you can visually see the difference in the spaces in schools in those countries. So Barbados is embarking. They have a very bold prime minister and some of the leaders there who are embarking on some significant changes in the next few years. And one of the key things that is going to be pretty major for them is to get rid of an exam that they take from the primary level to matriculate into the secondary level. It's called the 11 plus, which is something that we've done throughout in many islands in the Caribbean. And what happens is that students who get those top grades are the ones who get to go to the schools that are the preferred schools. And the ones who don't are just placed anywhere else, and usually it's not in a school that is a good school. So their mantra is to develop Barbadian citizens with global roots, global citizens, with Bayesian roots. And one of the things that they're wanting to do is to get rid of that examination, level the playing field, make every school a good school. There are 21 schools on the island, and 21 high schools, 68 primary schools. And so they're wanting to focus on developing, and so they have scale and size in their favor, which is what is really exciting for me to be able to be involved in work that's very manageable and doable. And so that removal of that exam, creating different forms of assessment that will have students show what they know, introducing play-based learning approaches and project-based learning approaches, and all of that is really, really exciting for our, not just for Barbados itself, but also for the region, because there's so much learning and sharing that's going to be happening across the countries in the Caribbean as a result of this project. And I think that what it calls us to do is to think really deeply about what education is about and what it means to us as a people, and why we continue to do things in the same ways, even though the results are not serving us, and we continue to repeat the cycle. And so I think that there's major disruption that is happening there to break down the inequities that exist, and to give so many more students and children and families opportunities to be their best selves. There really is and what is really interesting is the various views on the island, depending on where people sit you know,
Mhm.
because that's what power does, right? Power likes to keep certain people in their places. And so even though we say we want change, sometimes it really is difficult when the change is actually about to happen, because what it will mean is that the entire system will be mixed, and people will have to go to schools with people who they would not traditionally have gone to school with, and
Mhm.
teachers will have to teach all children and ensure that all children succeed, and not just teach the ones who are, who have been given privilege over time. So it's really exciting to see how a small place is going to be able to work this through. And I think that what has helped is the political will. It's this continued advocacy, it's leadership, at all levels, recognizing, acknowledging firstly, as Peggy said, the need for change, and
Mhm.
everybody working towards making that happen and committing to it. Um,
Mhm.
I think that that's what's making the difference. I'm excited. I'm so excited to be a part of that. I can't tell you.
Wow. Renee, I love that you just opened that with we need to be bold in this work, in equity work, and that no one in leadership should be in a space of neutrality. Peggy and Renee, you both talked about challenging the status quo, that for the projects and the examples you gave, there was an option to do nothing, but as leaders, we have a sense of urgency and responsibility to lean in and to challenge even very long-standing traditions. So thank you for those incredible examples of the work that you're leading. I want to talk more specifically about your roles as women in the field of educational leadership globally. How has your role influenced change and progress within the communities that you work in? Peggy, we can start with you again.
Wow. Yeah. Sometimes when people come to the school, even though we say change is difficult, they can't quite put their finger on what's happening here, but there's something that's happening that they want to be part of. So what happened is, even though we had these, major losses and transitions with the pandemic, enrollment just soared. It just went, off the charts, and now we have a waiting list of students in the school and so on and so forth. As a woman, how did I feel as a leader? And I didn't really stop to think about it. I didn't feel I had the luxury to stop and think about it. Oh, looking back now, I think that would probably work, 10 times as hard and as long as perhaps someone else who was a male in my position. But I felt a very strong responsibility that I had to see the community through, and we needed to continue to educate the students. We're student-centered school, and we said everything is about the students. So eventually, it all has to trickle down to learning, right? Luckily, though, due to my background, for the most part, I understand people. For the most part, I understand people, and I understand their needs, so I can speak to them in a way where they feel that I know, and that helps because I'm not talking down to them. I'm not coming from a position of power or necessarily expertise. I'm just connecting with what their needs are. So while it was challenging, like I said, I didn't give it a whole lot of thought. I tried not to get stuck in a place of feeling like a victim. All these things are happening. I just now took over this position. It's all happening to me now. Never once did I think about that. I just kind of got on with it, and that's my personality anyway. Very rarely, and this is not a good thing, will ask for help. I just move along and get things done. So that, I think, created a kind of confidence, looking back now, well, in my leadership team. And they said, okay, she knows what she's doing. She's got the psychology stuff down. I think we can trust that we're gonna figure it out. So that confidence exuded in the community, and
Mhm.
others came on board slowly. And even though they kept saying this is really hard, but we're there, we're with you, we're gonna move together. Now, did that have to do specifically with me being a female? Not necessarily, I don't think, but being
Mhm.
female, I did feel a stronger sense, I think, of responsibility, and that I had to work twice as hard to make this work.
Mhm. Thank you, Peggy. Renee, would you respond to this one?
Yeah, I've been in many instances in my journey, the only in several places, the only woman of color, the only woman, and so I have very often had to I've come to understand that visibility and representation matters. Um, I recognize this because there are so many who are not at those tables with me, and who were little girls like me who I look at when I go into classrooms every day. Who in Jamaica we have this really big issue with shadism, with not just
Mhm.
color, but with the shade of your skin, of your black skin. And so, when I see a little girl who looks like me, I say I'm deliberate and intentional about making sure she knows how special she is and how beautiful she is and how valued she is, because those things have huge impact in the context in which in which I've had to exist. And so as a leader, I think, having experienced this being the only many times, I am very intentional about ensuring that more people are at the table, that more people are visible and being recognized. More people who look like me. I was the Jamaica selected me to be the International Women's Forum Fellow in 2020, and so I got an opportunity to engage with women across the world in this fellowship. But one of my main project that I had to do as part of the fellowship involved a mentorship program with young women, young executive, well, women in Jamaica who were executives and leaders and what have you in various fields. I paired them with young women who are up and coming leaders, girls in high schools and other young women, to create this kind of network and support system, and to create the kind of network I didn't have when I was coming into being a professional and a leader. I was fortunate to have good mentors in many instances. I continue to have good mentors today, and I think that as I grow in leadership and as I share with other women in the space, I encourage them to do the same. I'm like, you need to be annoying and pull on people's coattails and ask questions and knock on the doors, and don't be afraid to do that, because I know the power of that. So, and I encourage my colleagues to be more intentional about opening those doors, sending the elevator back down, sharing with other girls and women who don't have these kinds of opportunities. So mentorship is a big thing. And then I think that because I've been able to go into different spaces globally, in other parts of the world, I'm able to see what the needs are for people who like me, women like me, girls like me, what needs to happen to change, and I'm able to bring that back and share it. I'm living out of DC at the moment, operating in learning and learning as much as I can, so that I can make sure that my people are getting as much as they need. And I think that that's the work, right? Those Maya Angelou says, those who learn teach, and I think that's why we're here.
Oh, thank you. In honor of Women's History Month, I thank both of you for taking on the responsibility of being women who work harder, who are often the only in a space, and who are also leading in really difficult times. Both of you steadily moving ships forward and making change happen through the pandemic and beyond, and doing the really difficult work. That's incredible. You set an example for all of us, including me. I want to pivot a little bit to talk about educational innovation. In particular, Renee, you have a background in STEM, and Peggy, you already alluded to your school's technology readiness. You've been a forerunner of AI in schools even for many years now. So I'm curious, as leaders in educational spaces, what innovation excites you the most right now? Renee, why don't you begin?
You know what? When I think about in the region, I think what's exciting me most about innovation is this whole is watching the conversations evolve, you know. I think that's where we are with some of the really new and emerging technologies and what have you that I see. I think it's people, it's a curiosity that people have around what it is. There's fear, but I think that in the main there's curiosity, and that excites me. It excites me to see schools trying to figure things out on their own. The innovation that emerged during COVID truly excited me. You know, I saw so many, even things that weren't technological, but just people finding ways to make learning happen and continue. That totally excited me. And I see, I'm some of it, I think that we've forgotten. We allowed all this creativity to emerge, and then we've gone back to our old ways in some instances. But I do believe that there are many innovations that we've continued to carry, particularly in education, that I think that we will keep and build on. Of course, AI and adaptive learning. I think that I am playing. It's a playground for me at the moment, because I'm learning so much and trying to you know, get used to it all myself, that I can share with the people who I work with. But it's a lot of experimentation. I feel like a kid in a candy store when somebody tells me about a new app that I can try and how it can help me. You know, I just did a PowerPoint presentation using AI. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just going to make my life so much easier. But yeah, so I think that I'm delighted. Oh, you know, one of the things that's really great is how persons are collaborating with, there are no geographical boundaries anymore. And that's one of the things that excites me about the real possibilities that can happen for growth and change in education, with the way we collaborate, you know, with teachers in schools, across schools, globally. That's super exciting to me.
Awesome. Peggy, what is exciting to you in educational innovation right now?
I think it's exciting to help get people past that fear, first of all, those who are still afraid, because I think there are a lot of people that are excited about AI. I'm very excited about virtual reality. We're dabbling a little bit with virtual reality in terms of the languages that kids are learning, and you know, helping them immerse themselves in the culture, in the environment, in the country. So that's exciting. I also, as you said, Renee, like the idea of, you know, personalized learning and really, you know, tailoring educational content that fit the particular learner, and you know, level that platform. I have to say that I'm kind of curious about automated grading, because I wonder if that's going to be meaningful and it's going to allow more time for the teachers to teach and spend more time with the students. And I have to say, about, you know, the idea of using data and crunching data, and using data analytics to be able to predict, to see patterns, to see how kids learn, so that you can intervene either earlier or when needed. All of these are exciting, but as you said, Renee, I think it's just constantly evolving. And if you're curious about it, then hopefully it'll be, you know, exciting to learn about it rather than fearful.
And the only thing one of the things that gives me pause, though, is that I don't want us to become so caught up with these new and emerging technologies that we're layering them onto, you know, bad practices that we've had all along. You know, because these nice and shiny devices and tools are not going to eradicate poor practice and poor teaching, poor pedagogy. So I would want us to, as we learn and as we grow, to make sure that we're rethinking how we're doing what we're doing, you know, and how we've done things, to make sure that it's really serving us in the ways, and serving our children ultimately in the ways that they need to be.
That comment really resonates with Peggy and with me serving on the Rail Advisory Board, that we really want to challenge what is great learning and not see teachers crank out even more worksheets for kids to do passively, right? So, you know, maybe automated grading means that grading would become more equitable, maybe taking some of the human piece out, takes away some of the error, and gives that teacher more time, space, and creativity to connect with kids and have meaningful experiences. So that resonates a lot. And I appreciate you naming that concern. Peggy, what concerns do you have about maybe some of these innovations or some of the technology moments that are in front of us now?
I think I have to agree here with Renee. Are we going to be relying too much on technology? That's one thing. Of course, there's the thing that everyone's concerned about, the privacy and the data security. How is the data going to be used? Are we going to be okay with that? The ethical use of AI, is it going to compromise educational, values and principles? Is it going to diminish the role of the teacher, or is it actually going to add to that role? I think those are very important things. And then I think ultimately the biggest concern is, how do we prepare kids for the workforce? Are we prepared as an educational institutions to prepare the next generation of learners for what's out there and what's waiting for them when we don't even know what to expect? So I think these are all questions that we're constantly asking ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And Renee, you said earlier that we're really, you're enjoying watching the conversations unfold. We're just at the beginning, which is disconcerting because we do want to prepare our kids for the unknown, and we're not really sure what that's going to mean exactly. But this is an exciting time to be talking about it.
It really is.
Yeah. So I want to pivot now and just do some rapid fire questions for you, just some short answers. We want to learn more about you and your interests. So let's start off with a book recommendation. What do you have for us? Go ahead, Renee.
Right now I'm reading The Art of Gathering.
Oh, yeah.
Good one.
Yeah. And I don't know why I haven't read it up until now, but by Priya Parker. And it's really about, getting people to connect meaningfully. And particularly because of the kind of work I'm always doing this work, all of us, I'm sure here in some ways are as teachers and as trainers and leaders, we're facilitating interactions with people. And it's important for those to be, in the book, it speaks about being very intentional about curating those kinds of experiences for whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, and to always have the purpose and the why in mind. I'm loving it. It's just reminding me of that every event requires a different kind of thinking, and every conversation that you facilitate. So that's the one that I've been reading. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've written, pieces of this book. I'm looking forward to finishing it, and it's called A Guide to AI Tools. Artificial intelligence will not replace human jobs, but humans using AI tools will. That's a topic, and it's by this man named Nico Trataris, and he happens to be an ACS alum. So I'm looking forward to meeting him at some point, and looking forward to finishing that book. So
fantastic. Thank you. What about a podcast? Is there anyone that you listen to or you've listened to in the past that you recommend to us?
Sorry, go ahead, Peggy. You go.
I'm sorry.
You can start, Peggy. Go ahead.
I think the one that I enjoy a lot is called AI in Education podcast by Dan Bowen and Ray Fleming. And they both have a background in education and technology, and it explores the impact of AI in education, looking at both the strengths and the challenges. And it addresses, the matter from both an educational and technological perspective, and it makes this accessible to educators. So, and technology people, of course, but mostly to educators. I enjoy that one.
Nice. Renee, you have a podcast for us?
Yeah, I'm sharing a new one. It really is new. It's only been around in the last few months. But it was started by a colleague of mine who I was in the IWF forum with. She's a diplomat with the U.S. government, and she has a fellow colleague who they both served in the Foreign Service for nearly 20 odd years and in different parts of the world. But they have also been the only in many instances in the spaces that they've been in professionally. And there were not many people who they were able to speak to or to have as a guide and look up to in professionally. And so they've started this really great podcast called Leadership Tea. So they're sipping tea with the persons they interview. I was one of their guests recently, and it's just this warm, beautiful exchange, I think, of amazing women who they're speaking to, and to gain insights, about life, about everything to do with life, but also about how to manage change, how to lead in times of crisis, because both of them have led during serious times of crisis, and taken a country through crisis, and but they're also able to speak to just how personally how they've navigated life. And I really think it's going to be a great one that will become a favorite among many women leaders in particular. So yeah, I'm sharing that one, and a shameless plug for my friends. So it's Leadership Tea by with Shelby and Belinda.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I'm curious if there's anyone that you're following. There's so many ways that you might be following on Instagram or LinkedIn or Threads or other places, but is there a blogger or an educational thought leader that, or writer that you really enjoy?
Lots of them. Besides Elon Musk, I don't know. So Andrei Karpathy is somebody I like to follow. He's a researcher and developer of deep learning, computer vision, and natural language processing, and he used to be a senior director at Tesla as well. And I enjoy his podcasts, or his following his ideas.
Thank you for that one, Renee.
Yeah, so I'm a part of a great community, and it's the hip hop ed community. Your colleague Nicole is a part of that too. Dr. Christopher Emden is the creator of and founder of the hip hop ed movement. But in that movement, what's really exciting is that there's so many different kinds of people who are coming at learning and education from a culturally responsive space. And if you log into Hip Hop Ed on any platform, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you will find a whole consortium, I call it, of people who are really being disruptive in education and innovative, and from kindergarten teachers to persons who are using music and integrating that with science and with technology and what have you, to really create change among young people and to lead young people to great success. And I think Chris Emden hosts a Twitter space on a Tuesday at 7, I believe it's 7 Eastern, 7:15 Eastern or 8:15 Eastern, I'm not sure. But it really is a place where we all come together and share and feed off each other, and it really is a rich community. It gives me life each time I join, and I feel like as educators in this, where it's sometimes really hard every day, it's important to have community, when you're doing this work, because it encourages you to draw and to keep that hope alive. We mentioned that earlier, to draw on each other and to learn from each other, and then to partner and connect. And I think a lot of that happens in that space. So I'd share that as a good resource. It was not just one, it's many, if you get connected.
Fantastic. Thank you. Chris Emden was a guest for us on a live chat last month. And so I hope folks can find that on our website and listen. It was a fabulous conversation. It's a great recommendation. We do have a question from someone who has joined us live. And this is coming from Adriana Scott Elliott. And this came a few minutes ago, so it's not directly about what we were talking about now. But what you were speaking about sounds like participatory action research. But how do you incorporate this in a curriculum-based achievement metrics? Psychological safety is not as firmly established as labeling for making errors, as opposed to being incentivized for thinking and doing outside of the box.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I could speak a little bit to action research because, given the fact that MSA is our accrediting body, and we have gone through the Sustaining Excellence Protocol, which requires action research to be implemented across the school. And so what it does is it gives teachers the opportunity to be reflective practitioners and to do their own research. But of course, they're guided through the process, but they're able to identify through observation their own questions, and then gather the data and then look at the best practice and the literature in that particular area and decide what they're going to change or continue to do more of, or tweak or whatnot. And so depending on what part of the school they're in, because the action research right now, we've moved to having everybody in the school do it, not just faculty, but administrators and administrative assistants and everyone. They really take a look at the areas that apply to them, and that they want to improve, that they want to do better. So it could be on mental health, it could be on AI, it could be on a particular area in their subject area. And I think it's the best way, one of the best ways to provide professional development within the school, because it really helps everybody to look at the areas that they're interested in. But then once they share the practice, you have a wide range of best practice ideas going on across the school, and it helps to bring everyone to a totally different level. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's with action research, developing reflective practitioners.
Thank you so much, Peggy. I think we have time for one last super quick word of advice that you have for anyone aspiring to leadership, and especially to women like me who hope to grow in the field of education. What do you have for us? Renee, let's start with you.
I think it really is important. We said this earlier, to stay curious, to be a lifelong learner yourself, always wanting to figure out what's next, what else can be done, how else can I approach this, and to being open to learning. I think everybody's a learner and everyone is a teacher, and if we come to the work that we do with that mindset, then we're always going to be open and growing. And I think it really is important to be authentic and to know who you are at every step of the game. When you know your why and what you're called to do, then the what should never change. Who you are. It should actually make it easier to live it out, live out your why once you keep that front and center, because it's easy to become distracted by so much and to lose hope. But that constant reminder of why you're doing what you're doing and standing in, who you are and what you believe in as a leader will take you a far way. I know that's been my guide. And then just building strong relationships all the time, finding your people, finding your tribe and sticking close to them, and making sure that you'll always have different people and in your life for different seasons. And I think that you have to ensure that you use that fully and champion equity and inclusivity all the way. Yeah, I think that would sum up what we've discussed today.
Thank you. Peggy, what's your advice for those aspiring to leadership?
I would say don't wait until you have all your ducks in a row, all the right degrees, all the right experience, all of this. Just take that risk, and go for it. The other thing is, I agree with you, Renee, that, being authentic is very important and not trying to mimic other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say surround yourself with people who are your cheerleaders, especially with women who are your cheerleaders, rather than somebody trying to bring you down, but definitely people who encourage you, who challenge you to be better. I would say that would be my last piece of advice.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Oh, Peggy and Renee, this has been a fantastic conversation with you. Thank you for joining us and sharing your wisdom and insights. And to our audience, I hope that you continue to find value in this year of education change makers at MSA. And please stay tuned for more live chats and workshops from MSA at MSA Evolution Lab. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Amber.
Thank you.
Meet you, Renee.